Welcome back, everyone. It's Brandon from elevationprocess.com. So, with the recent launch of our product for chronic pain management, I thought it would be quite prudent and possibly very helpful to film a video just really on the 10 most important things that you need to know about chronic pain. So, if you're new to chronic pain, if chronic pain is something that's new in your life, or even if you've been dealing with this for a long time, I hope that you'll find this video to be helpful. So the first point that we wanted to touch on here today is that there is no actual cure for chronic pain. And you need to be aware of anyone who says that there is or that they have some kind of magical cure for this. Okay, I've seen hundreds of people with chronic pain over the years, and unfortunately a lot of those folks end up getting taken advantage of by medical practitioners and other people who claim to have, the secret to chronic pain, the cure for chronic pain. And I've seen people be taken for thousands of dollars that they really don't have. So, while this might be kind of a disappointing one to start with, the point is, the situation's not hopeless, as we're going to talk about in one of the other points. But yeah, there is no cure for chronic pain. It doesn't mean that you can't do things to help change your life and to manage your life, and that you can't live a great life with chronic pain. But expecting there to be a cure, there is no cure. There is no magical bullet. So the second point that I really wanted to try and get across to people is this one here. We can't see or prove actually that you have chronic pain. And I think this one comes as kind of a surprise for people. We live in this age where we're accomplishing fantastic things with the human body. We have all these really fancy tests, MRIs and CT scans and blood work and all of these things. And none of it actually will prove the fact that you have chronic pain. Okay? So this creates a lot of difficulty for folks, specifically when you're applying for, insurance coverage or disability coverage. Also with workmen's compensation boards across this country in Canada. Okay? But I think it's important to remember that, just because we can't see your pain doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real. And this is a message that, we've been trying to get out to healthcare providers. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean that it's not real. Okay? And that actually brings me to my next point. So the third point that we wanted to bring up is that your chronic pain is real, okay? And this isn't just something that's made up or all in your head. And I think, a lot of times people with chronic pain can have so much difficulty with this because you know what you're experiencing in your body, but yet when you go to your healthcare providers or you talk with other people in your family, because again, we can't see that you have pain via all those different fancy tests that we talked about before, you can kind of get this idea from other people that, well, maybe this is just something that you're making up in your head or that it's not real. It's really important that you understand that chronic pain is real, okay? This is your experience and it's real. It's not just in your head. Another thing that I wanted to touch on was the fact that, it can be very difficult to find family doctors, and I recognize part of the difficulty with that. But you need to be aware of any healthcare professionals that you come into contact with who send this message, okay? That it's not real and that this is all in your head, and that your pain is caused by things like depression or anxiety. And if you could just fix those things, your pain would go away. That's not true, and it's not advice that you should be taking. While it's true that your pain can certainly impact your mood and make mood worse, same thing with anxiety. The two don't cause each other, okay? So they're related, they're correlated, but they don't cause each other. And that's an important distinction to make. So be very careful with healthcare providers that send this message, okay? That comes from a fundamental misunderstanding and lack of knowledge as to what chronic pain is and how we deal with that. So point 4 that we wanted to discuss is if chronic pain is something that's new for you, you're struggling to find answers, and specifically in this day and age, we'll get a diagnosis from our doctors. It scares the hell out of us, and the first thing we do is we kind of come home, and as our emotions kind of start to come back down, the first thing we do is we get online, right? We try and find anything we can about our diagnosis, whatever that is. And the point I wanted to touch on here is you need to be very careful where you get your information from, okay? The internet is a fantastic resource for information. I mean, there's a ton of it out there, but there's a lot of information out there, specifically with chronic pain and specifically on social media sites, that you gotta be very aware of and very careful of, right? So I tell people all the time, if you're gonna get information off the internet, try and get it from a trusted source, right? So we're talking, university websites, we're talking multidisciplinary pain clinic websites. For the most part, you can trust that the content on those websites is research-based, is research-backed, okay? One of the things that we're so proud of with our course for chronic pain, is that all of this stuff is research-based, okay? These aren't things we just picked out of our hats and came up with. We know that this stuff works, and it all comes from significant research, okay? The program that we have for chronic pain is the exact same program that's being taught around pain clinics around the world, okay? So you can trust this information. And I think that's important. Be very careful where you get your information from, okay? The other thing is that we're all a little bit different. So, for example, I know that there's a ton of people on Facebook groups for chronic pain and stuff like that. I don't have any problem with those necessarily, except that, again, we're all different. And what that means is, just because a medication might work for me doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you, and or that it might be dangerous for you, okay? So I think sometimes we can get caught up in taking information that we hear here and then trying to force that information onto our healthcare providers, okay, without necessarily knowing or understanding what that drug is and what it can do to us. What are some of the negative consequences of that drug, okay? We got to be very careful with this. Be careful where you get your information from. So I think this one in particular is extremely important. When we start to have chronic pain and we're having difficulty with it, we just want something, right? We want anything that's going to help and to try and get rid of that pain. And because of past experiences and different things that we've learned over the course of our lives, we have this idea that medications can in some way get rid of pain. Okay, and if I just find the right medication, my pain will go away. And I think this point is extremely important to remember. Medications, without question, can help, but they are not a cure. The strongest opiate medications that we have, the best that we can do is help to turn the volume down a little bit on your pain. It doesn't get rid of your pain. And because of a concept called tolerance, which is essentially the more you take, the more you have to take, specifically with opiate medications, we get caught up in this cycle of taking more, we feel good, but then we do more, and ultimately we become tolerant, the medication doesn't work as well, and then we need to increase that dose in order to get the same effect. And what happens over a period of time is that we start to take more and more medications, and specifically with opiate medications, the higher we get, the more dangerous these medications become. And I think specifically this idea of tolerance and difficulties that we can have with addiction, among other things, is one of the real problems that we're having right now with opiate medications. And this is something you hear about all the time on the news, right? Both in Canada and the United States. So this is an important thing to remember. Medications have helped people. They do help people, but it's only one part of the puzzle. Okay, you need to recognize that there's a bunch of other things that also contribute to your pain and that can also help. I think we become overly reliant on medications to do the job, and then we're disappointed and frustrated when they don't help. Okay? Very important to remember. So point number 6 is modify your expectations for some of these tertiary services that we provide. While it's extremely important to remember that things like physio in particular, physical activity is extremely important with managing pain. These tertiary services, as I mentioned coming back to the first video, they don't get rid of chronic pain either, right? They don't heal chronic pain. So I think sometimes we can get caught up in, spending a ton of money on some of these services, physio, massage, acupuncture, the list is on and on, right? Injections, all these things, expecting that, it's going to be a long-term solution. These things are not, okay? So be very careful with how much money you're spending on these. Again, if this is something that's part of your insurance coverage, and it's not going to cost you anything, go, okay? Because they will be helpful in helping to turn down your pain a little bit. But I think we need to be careful, just our expectations with these, okay? They're not going to cure your chronic pain, right? Psychotherapy, the stuff that I do, it's not going to cure chronic pain either, but it can help you to manage. So I think we need to modify some of our expectations for these as well, because we can get frustrated or angry when I've been going to massage or physio for 10 weeks and my pain is still there. So the seventh thing I wanted to touch on is how you choose to live your life now is key. Okay, and I have now underlined because I think that's really important. We're all frustrated when we start to experience chronic pain, and we have difficulty with that, and we just want our lives to go back to the way that they were. It's important to remember that your life has changed, right? And you may not necessarily be happy with that, and you may not like that, but that's a fact of life with chronic pain. So the more that you engage in this, trying to engage in the activities that you did before you had pain, the way you did before you had pain, engaging in a lifestyle that's not conducive to managing chronic pain, the worse you're going to make your pain, right? The worse we make our pain, the more we start to lean on things like medications to help manage it, and the worse it kind of gets, okay? So how you manage your life is key. And here we're talking things like diet, exercise, anxiety, mood management, sleep hygiene. We talk about different communication strategies, meditation. A lot of people have found to be very helpful with chronic pain. And again, coming back to the product that we have for chronic pain, it includes all of these things, right? How we choose to live our life now is key because we have the choice to make, right? We can contribute to making our lives worse, or we can contribute to making our lives a little bit better. Again, we're not going to cure chronic pain because, as I mentioned on that first point, we don't have a cure for pain. But we can make our pain a heck of a lot worse if we're not paying attention to how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. So our next point here is that psychotherapy can be a key component of pain management. I think kind of lost in the translation of our experience of chronic pain is that it's normal to experience a lot of depression and anxiety associated with that. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. It's not easy to live life every day in pain, right? And I think, the fact that access to psychological services with chronic pain isn't necessarily something that is our first go-to is a mistake, right? The idea is, of course, with chronic pain, my mood is affected, my anxiety is affected, my sleep is affected, my relationships are affected. All of these things can contribute to making my experience of pain worse. So psychotherapy, where you go and talk with a counselor or a psychologist, specifically someone who understands what you're going through. Certain services like cognitive behavior therapy have been shown to be quite helpful for folks who have chronic pain, okay? If you're experiencing chronic pain and you're not having difficulty with your mood or anxiety, then that's great, that's perfect, okay? A lot of people do. And if you are one of these people, you should seriously consider talking with your doctor and trying to find some form of psychotherapy, whether that's from, again, a psychologist, a counselor, someone that you trust, and someone that has an idea about chronic pain and the different effects that can have on you. So the ninth point that we wanted to talk about briefly is the importance of maintaining and prioritizing your social support networks. We all kind of have this inclination, as soon as we're having difficulty, to just kind of push other people away and try and go at things ourselves. More and more research is showing that that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. Research on loneliness in particular shows that loneliness over the long term can be as damaging to your health as things like obesity and smoking. When you think about that, that's amazing, right? And really, really sad. Specifically in this modern day, where we have these fantastic tools, these cell phones that we can use, and all these apps, we can contact people around the world. And yet, research shows that as a society, we're feeling more and more lonely, right? We're spending less and less time, in our social activities and with our social networks. Specifically with chronic pain, this is one of the things I would suggest that would be worth your time, okay? I recognize that you have limited gas in the tank and that sometimes, just getting up and getting out of bed can be really difficult. If you can, okay, maintain these social support networks. This is extremely important. Finally, the last point that I wanted to make is that, don't make the assumption of assuming that because you have chronic pain, that your situation is hopeless, that you have nothing to live for, and that the situation's never going to get any better. Because that's not true. I think specifically with chronic pain, we're starting to learn more and more about chronic pain on a daily basis, right? This is becoming a problem the world over, and there's a ton of research that's being done currently and that has been done within the last, 5 years in particular, about what chronic pain is, what we can do to try and manage it, and, some beneficial things. So, specifically with things like migraine headache, headache, I think it will surprise people to know, but headache is the number one reason that people report at hospitals complaining of pain across the world, okay? So you can bet your bottom dollar that there's a lot of pharmacology companies who are right this minute working on some sort of medication, right, to try and alleviate some of the suffering that people with migraine headache in particular have. So if they can come up with a cure for that, a pill that cures migraine headache, it's going to be worth billions overnight. So, I think there's reason to be optimistic, specifically with, all the research and stuff that's being currently done. So don't lose hope, okay? Chronic pain is difficult. It's not easy to go through on a day-to-day basis. Keep grinding, right? Again, remember that the way that I live my life is key, and I gotta get information from trusted sources. Again, I'll point you to the product that we have for chronic pain management. It's really, really good, okay? That product in particular consists of 9 different topics that have, an included video of me talking about that in particular. There's also a PowerPoint slide presentation that you can access and print that has all the information that I talk about on it. There's also access to the audio files from those, right? So, you can download that and you can keep it on your handheld device. So if you're having difficulty and, you just want to tune in and listen to those, you're more than welcome to do that. Again, all the videos are accessible on your devices as well, okay? Really proud of that product, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. So if you're watching this video and you have chronic pain, or other people who would likely benefit from the information in this video, please forward it on to them, okay? And like the video. Again, the more feedback that I can kind of get from you guys, the easier it's going to be to kind of decide where you would like future content to go.